Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Uncensored CMO. Now, did you know that this week happens to be 70 years since the very first advert went on TV? So my next guest could not be more perfect. Dame Carolyn McCall is the CEO of the nation's #1 broadcaster. And we caught up to find out what impact TV advertising has had on business over those many years, and what are some of the lessons we can learn from the all-time greats of advertising that you can apply to your brand today. It's a great conversation. Here it is. This is such an honour to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Such a pleasure.
And it is 70 years, which is amazing. And I know at ITV you're doing lots to mark the occasion and celebrate it. How's it feel in ITV at the moment to reach this mark?
I think everyone's extremely proud, but not for the most obvious reasons about being able to be 70 years old. It's more about what has been done over the 70 years. So, there's a lot of respect for the past, for Granada, for Yorkshire, for all the amazing kind of creative forces that have made ITV today, because so many, I always say we were born in the regions, so we've never had to work hard to be in the regions. We are a regional player that has become national. So very proud of that. And I think also a lot of people are very proud of the transformation that ITV has been on, particularly in the last 8 years, where, we've had to work really, really hard to kind of read what's going on and then stay as much abreast of that, if not ahead of that. But it's changing so fast in our world that, if you just think 10 years ago, streaming no one was really talking about it very much. It was here, but it wasn't the way it is today. So we've had to do so much from a technology, data, advertising has changed beyond belief, and that has kept us very much on our toes. So I think people are very proud of that. So I think people feel that we're fit for the future as much as being very happy about where we've come from.
You're right about the amount of change, isn't it, with the rise of social media, technology, now with AI, that there's a lot happening. Yeah. We'll get into a little bit more about that. I'd love to find out and pick your brains on that. This is another year as well of change, because you've become the president of the Marketing Society.
I have.
Which I'm delighted to hear. I'd love to know what your vision might be for the marketing industry as a whole as you become president.
Well, look, Sophie Devonshire is very much the kind of driving force of the Marketing Society, and I enjoy very much working with her and with Craig, who, as you know, is chair. But they're a fantastic team. I think the key thing there is to get marketers at the centre of conversations in organisations, because I think they should be consulted on virtually everything, whether it's product, whether it's communication, consumer insight. They really are they're where it's at, really. And so when I hear that marketers are often not consulted, or they're not on boards, or they're kind of doing a lot of the work, it's not just about the ad, right? It's not just about the kind of coming in and saying, sign this off, which in many companies that can be the case. It starts with the consumer, and marketers are really at the sharp end of that. They're the ones who can see what's happening with consumers, how things are changing, working with agencies, working with others. It's such an amazing place to be. And so I think the Marketing Society very much wants to get that recognised, but also give marketers the confidence and the skills and the network in order for them to be able to be at the centre of that. So, some marketers want to be on boards, some marketers want to be CEOs. Well, I think the Marketing Society can help you do that. Some marketers just want to be brilliant at their jobs and want to continue to be marketers. That's great too. And I think the Marketing Society does all of those things really well. It's global, so it puts you in touch with lots of different ways of marketing. So I think it's a very powerful force, actually, if harnessed well.
It really is. And I think the statistics are something like less than 4% of people on boards have got any marketing experience. So the opportunity...
Is that right?
Yeah, I know. I had the guy, Chris Burgrave, he was a CMO of AB InBev, and he did some research on this and found, I think it was 3.5% of board members today have got any marketing experience, which is incredibly low. So
That's
the opportunity,
so low.
The opportunities are, incredible.
Yeah, that is so low. I was lucky. I was brought up, really. I started my career properly at The Guardian, and we did a lot of product development in my early years. We did, The Guide and Weekend Guardian when it first became a magazine, and we launched a whole series of magazines with The Observer and so on. And so product development and marketing just went hand in hand. That didn't sit. It worked with editorial to create those things. And so I guess I grew up with marketing being quite a powerful force. And so I've never really ever thought any differently. So when I then became a CEO at easyJet, for me, I stayed very close to marketing because I felt that that's how I would understand how to reposition the company, not just the brand.
That makes complete sense, doesn't it? You've been CEO of some very high-profile companies, and I'd love your advice on, if anyone's listening and they want to make the jump into the CEO position, what advice would you give to being a successful CEO?
Look, I think if you're going into a CEO role, research. So diligence, research. Really find out what you're going into. I mean, I had already been a CEO at the Guardian Media Group, but I hadn't really been in a publicly listed company, and I certainly hadn't had a 36% shareholder ever before. So I went in with my eyes wide open, knowing it was going to be extremely difficult. And I also didn't know how bad it was operationally, but I did know it was having significant issues. And that equips you better. At least you're armed when you go in. And then I think early on, you've got to kind of set your stall out, but also you've got to listen a lot. And the biggest tip, I think, for me is don't sit in an office listening to people present to you when you're a CEO, because that's what everyone wants to do. They all want their time with you to tell you how they're doing and what they're doing. Actually go out and talk to people right around the company in all the markets and listen, and then act quickly. Once you know, and you've given it 3 or 4 months, then act quickly.
I remember meeting the founder of Specsavers, and she's an absolute delight.
I just think amazing.
Absolute delight.
Yeah.
And I remember she still takes the bus to work. And I'm like, why do you take the bus to work? But of course, she takes the bus to work because she can overhear conversations about problems people are having ordering their glasses. And of course, she starts conversations with everyone else on the bus. I just thought, what a brilliant way of staying connected.
They've got to, people say this quite a lot, and I didn't realise that it was a thing, but I just instinctively on my first flight as CEO just went up to talk to the crew, and they started doing what we call the gash, which is the rubbish. And I just grabbed one end of the bag and I did it with them. And I was just listening to them. They chat. They're talking to the customers and passengers, and as we go, and it was amazing. And then I never stopped doing it. So there was not one flight, even as a normal passenger when I worked there, that I didn't do the gash with the crew. And I loved it because I learnt a lot. Passengers really liked it because they could stop me and say, oh, by the way, you're doing that really well. Or, listen, you've really got to change this. That system doesn't work, or whatever. So I just felt it was a fantastic learning opportunity for me. And it stood me in very good stead because I would then go back and say, by the way, do you know? We need to look at this, or whatever. So it's these little things sometimes that are quite transformational in an organisation.
And in terms of listening to the customer, you now oversee, the nation's biggest commercial broadcaster. And I think something people may not realise, of course, is the kind of public service element.
Yeah.
Because you're providing news, you're covering live sport, as well as bringing entertainment. It's a massive responsibility, isn't it, to kind of serve the nation in that kind of way?
I think, it's a massive responsibility both to the viewers and to society, actually, and also to your people, because they have high expectations, actually. A lot of people work here because they have a sense of purpose. And I think they do really want to work for a purpose-driven organisation. And yet we are very commercial. So, that being proudly creative and proudly commercial I use that word, and it's so true because we are owned by shareholders, actually, and yet we're a public service broadcaster, but we're a commercial one, so we have to fund ourselves. We're all ad funded. That's where, everything we do in M&E, in media and entertainment, which is ITV channels and streaming, is funded by advertising. And that's a big thing because you've got news and regional news, which we're extremely proud of. We do regional news, I think, better than anybody because we're very much part of communities. That's very much part of the public service remit. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we do Love Island and I'm a Celebrity. And sometimes when I'm talking to people, they forget how much we do on this side. So a lot of the entertainment shows and reality shows fund news, and they also fund things like Mr. Bates and the Post Office, or I Fought the Law, which is on at the moment, which Sheridan Smith is just amazing.
It's incredible.
Change the Law, Double Jeopardy, and also now The Hack, which has been sold to 50 countries. But when that was commissioned by Kevin, he did not know, and Polly, they didn't know that was going to sell at all. And Mr. Bates is the same. I mean, I think, they thought, well, actually, we have to make this because it's a very powerful drama about Britain and it's a British story. And actually, it had been running for 20 years. And until we showed that, it did not get the traction with the government to change the law. So TV, I know I work for TV, and so I'm bound to say this, but it's unbelievably powerful at storytelling. And I think the reason it had that impact is because it told human stories. It didn't take it from this is the post office doing a terrible thing and this, it went into these are people that are affected. These are real people who are affected by this scandal. And the impact has been phenomenal.
I remember that moment after watching Mr. Bates when you then saw it debated in Parliament, and just the sort of crossover from watching entertainment to actually seeing something, change significantly. And the bit I didn't realise is that most of them are still waiting for compensation.
Yeah.
However many years later, and you think, well, would that have happened if it hadn't been for the drama? I doubt that a lot.
I doubt it, because honestly, there were journalists, brilliant journalists, covering this story for 20 years. It actually broke in a computer trade press. Actually, that's where the story started, and then Sunday Times picked it up. But actually, it didn't. This is what I'm saying. I think the impact is an emotional impact where people are like, how could this happen to ordinary people just trying to do their jobs? So it shows the power of TV better than most things, actually.
It really does. How do you now, because some of your competitors now are global streaming giants, aren't they? So something I love watching is the Tour de France. And I'm gutted that Tour de France won't be free to air next year.
I know. I'm so sorry.
And think the following year, I think, the Tour de France actually starts in the UK as well. So we've got this moment where it's coming to our doorstep, we won't be able to see it. How do you compete with sort of, really big global streaming giants that are paying a lot of money?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's harder and harder. I think that's why, we have to make sure that every penny we have is well spent. I mean, we have rebased completely our cost base. It's been very painful, it's been very difficult, but that's part of the transformation. We've invested where we think we're really going to get the return, which is ITVX. Shareholders were really unhappy when we launched ITVX and spent 160 million quid a year for 3 years, but now it's just a no-brainer, right? I mean, you can't imagine not having a strong streaming service, and it's doing very, very well. But I think the way we've had to do it is to be very focused on what we're really good at, and we can't do everything. So entertainment, reality, live sport, news, drama. We focus on those things. That's what we do. And the Tour de France is unfortunately not a listed event. So we really focus our energy on getting the World Cup, getting all of those big national moments. That's what we focus our attention on. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't do, we're doing some, we do a lot on racing, which is not listed. Horse racing, we do it really well. But we will always focus on those listed events, make sure we try and get those, because the streamers can't go for them. And we collaborate well with the BBC when we do that. Well,
the collaboration is something that I think people on the outside don't necessarily realise, because one of your biggest advertisers is Sky. One of the biggest Netflix, dramas is one that you've made, isn't it? So there's an incredible kind of ecosystem of entertainment.
It's an interesting one, because actually you have to take like Netflix buying drama from us. That's from our studios business. And so that's quite interesting. So with Rivals, for instance, which is on Disney Plus, which is a breakout show last year, and series 2 is coming up now, is people were saying to me, well, why didn't you get it? Or lots of people internally were saying, well, why didn't we get Rivals? Why isn't Rivals on ITV? Well, bluntly, we can afford that. We have to be really careful about the number of how many dramas we do. And if we'd have done Rivals, we would have probably not done 2 others, right? So it was a big blockbuster show and was probably double the price that we would normally pay for a drama. That doesn't mean the dramas are not really good. It just means they're a different kind of drama with different kind of sets, if you like. So, I mean, and also that's what ITV Studios is there for. ITV Studios is there really as a diversification of revenue for ITV, so that it makes money selling to other FTAs around the world. I mean, the BBC is a good client, Netflix, Amazon, Disney, you name it, everyone buys from ITV Studios. And so there's that interesting thing where we are often partners with people, and then we're also competing with them. And, Google's a great example of that. We're on YouTube, and, because we know that we need to reach that under 25 audience, And we've really changed our strategy on that because we recognise they might not come back to ITVX, but they are watching it and we're able to sell the advertising. And yet we're competing with them for advertising. So it's a very complicated world.
It is, isn't it? Fascinating. I find it absolutely fascinating how that all works. Now, something you're really famous for is some big blockbuster series like I'm a Celebrity, Love Island. I had to check my notes on this, but I'm a Celebrity over 20 years.
I know. Aren't they amazing?
I had to go and look at that again. I think Ant and Dec have done a great job of not looking like they've aged at all.
They don't look like they've aged, and their sense of humour is never far away. Do you know what I mean? They keep this kind of ebullience and this fantastically funny kind of way of working. I mean, they have fantastic chemistry to this day. So, yeah, they're honestly, I'm a Celebrity is one of our most successful shows still.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are the secrets to having that kind of longevity of a hit running for so many years?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think you have to be careful not to do too much with it. So, you can do spin-off shows. We do a spin-off show with I'm a Celebrity. We do that with Love Island, All Stars, for instance. You've got to be careful not to overdo that. I think you have to nurture your flagship shows and you've got to keep them fresh. I mean, it depends on who's doing them and how they're being done, and that's what you do. And also, it's not easy getting a hit. So once you've had a hit, you want to keep it.
Yeah, totally.
It's really hard getting a hit.
We did this research actually last year at System 1 called Compound Creativity, and it was fascinating. I mean, it's only a 3 or 5 year period we looked at the data in, but we found that the more consistent a campaign was, the more people actually liked it. So familiarity breeds contentment in this case.
And contentment,
yeah, exactly.
Not the reverse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So actually, we laugh at jokes that are familiar.
Yeah.
We have a stronger emotional bond with celebrities that we see more often.
Yeah.
So I can see why that works. And we sort of landed this 80-20 rule that you want to keep it 80% the same and about 20% new. So you kind of freshen it up every year, but not change the reason why everyone kind of loves watching it.
Well, the big thing is, I mean, recurring drama is like that too. So it's not just on the entertainment side. People love seeing something like Unforgotten. So where we'd be worried is if we're changing the lead character in something, you have to work quite hard at making sure that audiences are going to respond well to the lead character who's not the same lead character as before. So it's complicated. It's complicated. Everything's complicated. I mean, life is in media and creativity is quite an interesting, complicated world, really.
Now, we talked at the beginning about how much has changed in the last 10 years. So of the advent of streaming, we've got social media taking a lot more kind of share of ad spends. How relevant is TV advertising today compared to, because we love to look back at the classics, don't we, from 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, look,
how relevant is it today?
Look, when I joined 8 years ago, I remember I'd been a client at easyJet, so I was, we were obviously buying quite a lot of advertising, but what I found when I got to easyJet, because it's digital, it was digital already, and no paper tickets, etc., was that they were spending a huge amount of money on digital, whatever that was, but digital advertising at that time. So that was a long time ago. That was 16 years ago when I started at easyJet. And I just remember going, I don't understand this. The dial wasn't shifting. Like, we weren't selling more seats. The branding was terrible. I mean, it was like a camel go to Egypt, 30 quid. I mean, it was really, quite shocking, some of the advertising. Funny, but shocking. And we brought, there was no marketing director, actually, which says quite a lot. It was like and so I brought in Peter Duffy, actually, and we really together and with his team and with the agency, VCP, we revolutionised how we did marketing, including how so we're still doing digital, but we reapportion it. We, for the first time ever, we used TV. So I don't think they'd ever used TV before that, not properly. And it really, really worked. And so we got the emotional message across. So it was not just transactional. Here's a camel, here's a price, here's a clog, here's Holland. It was much more kind of come and fly with us, right? It's going to be great value, but you're going to get some fun. The crew are great. It had that emotional resonance. It was very, very, very successful. It was a brilliant campaign, and to this day, I think they do a lot of that. I got here, and I just thought, as I can talk as a client rather than just as a marketer from the past. and start talking about really being proactive and front foot and not being cowed, not being overwhelmed by all this overwhelming kind of programmatic, calling programmatic performance. That's an adjective, right? It's not always performance, right? It's a certain kind of advertising. It has a place, but it's not the only thing you should be doing. So I feel we've really got on the front foot for TV, and I also think the pendulum has swung back a bit.
I think it really has.
I really do.
I think performance marketing is the biggest branding kind of stunt in history, isn't it?
Amazing stunt.
Somehow like making everything else look like it's not performing.
It's not performing.
I'm like, come on, everyone.
Yeah, well, I don't use that. We don't use that terminology here, because it's everything should be performing, and that's why we've put a lot of money into outcomes, into effectiveness, and TV is proven to be the most effective advertising channel, and it also has the best return on investment. So when I say it's the most effective, people say, yeah, but it's really expensive. I say, no, actually it will give you the best return on investment. We're never going to say only use TV. I mean, some advertisers should only use TV, actually, but we would always say use it with other media. And we've done some internal research which shows very clearly that it drives web traffic by about an incremental 20%. It drives sales by about an additional 10%. And it really, really resonates for the brand. Yeah. That brand enhancement becomes, is increased by something like 25%. So, there's ample evidence. I just think if you're in an agency and you're young and you're not watching as much telly as you were and you're doing a lot of social, that is something that we have to address. We've got to make sure that young planners, young buyers understand how powerful a medium it is.
Yeah, the data that absolutely hit me through the eyes was last year. Ubiquity and Lumen did this study looking at the amount of attention different platforms get, and then they took the CPM and adjusted it for the attention weighted it. So I'll try and quote it correctly here, but they were looking at TV typically £8 CPM versus social media advertising at say £2.20. Huge difference. You look at that and go, wow, TV is almost 4 times the price of digital. They then adjusted it for attention, actual attentive seconds. They were measuring how much of the ad was actually viewed. And then suddenly the TV went down to £1.19 and the social advertising went up to £3.20. So the exact conclusion got flipped based on measuring for attention. So as soon as you realise that, and then it takes a few seconds.
And that shouldn't be surprising, should it? Given the context, how you're watching, and given, that shouldn't be surprising, but it's a great, it's great Ubiquity did that.
Well, the kick in the data, I remember I saw Peter Field was presenting at ThinkBox last year, was he then said, well, of course, we're looking at the national population. So everyone's sort of nodding along, going, oh, yeah. But what about Gen Z? Even for Gen Z, they were consuming more TV advertising when you adjust for attention than any other channel.
That's so
even for Gen Z, going back to your young buyer points.
Yeah.
The funniest example.
Because, of course, Gen Z, you say Gen Z, it's Gen Z. I was going to say Gen Z. That's not right. They come in. So 25 to 28% of our celebrity viewers are Gen Z, right? Love Island, maybe 50%. Live sport, huge numbers, huge proportion of our audiences on football will be them. So it's not like we don't get Gen Z. We actually get them, but we don't get them at this, all the time. And that's what we have to adjust to. And we took a really important strategic decision, which is we're not going to create content to chase them, because we felt that was putting money down a black hole. Because it's very difficult to know what kind of content they're going to come to. So that was a big content decision.
I think my favourite bit of research I've ever seen on this was, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. I think you commissioned it. It was like a bit like a Gogglebox experiment, filming people watching adverts. Yeah. And there was this funny bit where you got this couple on the sofa and they're joking with each other, going, no one watches TV ads anymore. And then the Just Eat ad comes on, and the guy literally sings to his girlfriend, like, did somebody say? And then they go on their phone and they order Just Eat. And they continue going, no one watches adverts anymore.
Yeah, they're big TV fans, Just Eat,
Indeed, it's funny. Anyway, talking about TV advertising, we've just launched this new report together, haven't we? Living Room Legends, which if anyone's watching is on the, I have to say.
On my table.
On the table. I always forget that things can can be physical these days. We do these reports, then suddenly these boxes arrive in the office. Oh, we actually made.
But I'm
made it
glad
into a
that's
book.
physical. Actually,
It's great,
I think
isn't
it's
it?
brilliant because it really does need flicking through. You do need to read a bit.
You
of
do, and it
scroll.
It adds, doesn't it? It adds something to it.
Yeah.
But this, I mean, I remember having lunch with Kate Waters, the amazing Kate Waters last year,
Amazing.
and she was saying, "John, next year 70 years of TV advertising," and the idea she came up with, let's try and work out the 70 best TV ads over 70 years. I'm like, that is audacious, right? That's going to take some debate, and there was some debate to get to it. But there's some amazing lessons. I mean, firstly, just recognising how much amazing work is out there, and we put it all through the System 1 test, and the average I think was over 4 stars, so
fantastic,
like, absolutely almost top of the charts.
But actually that's way above, isn't it?
It
the
is,
average
yeah,
of most
yeah.
ads.
So we had a broad panel coming up with the 70, and so 4-star would put it in the top 5% of all ads that we measure. But the important thing with that is we measure emotional response, so these ads made people feel happiness, feel surprise, and so on. So they really worked. But I thought I'd ask you about a few of them, because one of your own actually appeared in this, didn't it?
I was so pleased about that when I saw it on the reel. I mean, a lot of people said when we showed the ads, we did a mashup of the 70 and played it at the big event that we had. I remember Janet Street Porter saying on Loose Women, "Oh my God, the best thing about that whole evening wasn't speeches." She said it was the advertising reel, and she said my favourite one was the Martian one with Smash. And she started doing all the voices, and that was really very funny. And I was really pleased to see Points of View, Skinhead, on there. It was my first year at the Guardian. It was quite a formative time. I was in planning, and I remember them working on this ad, and I remember going to see some of the rough cuts and stuff like this, BMP, and it had the most profound effect. Actually, it was like about context, it was about bias, prejudice, it was about perspective. It was really good. And I have to say, I used to work in the department that used to have to send it out on request, and nearly every school would ask for it to be able to teach people about that. So no, it had the most amazing effect. It was a great ad, right?
Incredible.
So
we
it's
talked
one of my
about advertising being emotional. What advert or what campaign has created the biggest emotional response for you?
Do you know, over time, I would say, I know everyone will say the John Lewis ads and the Christmas ads, and I agree with that. They're very lovely, and they're very fluffy and soft, and they remind you of your family and nostalgia. They're lovely. But for me, it's drink driving, because it makes you it makes you cry, because they often base them on true situations and stories. And if you look over the years, they've been very consistent, even though obviously drink driving, I think, has reduced quite a lot because of that campaign. It's very powerful. I mean, they don't hold back, do you know what I mean? And it jolts you. So I think that's one of the most impactful in an emotional way, because it's about families, it's about friends, it's about peer pressure, it's about, it's all the real things in life. And they've been consistent. They've done a, very consistent campaign over years.
Now, of course, ITV, you're famous for entertainment as well. I just wondered, something else that came out in the report was the importance of entertaining, putting on the show, making people laugh. Is there any ad that comes to mind that's really made you laugh?
I do, that Cadbury's ad with the gorilla. I mean, I know we've got the gorilla in our 70 years. It's got to be. Yeah. We laugh. I don't know why, but it's just so ridiculous, and it is joyous. It's like it's if you like concerts and music, and it brings you joy. And that caption, which is about joy, it's just quite funny. And there's probably hundreds of others, right? But I mean, that it's a bit of a standout ad, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Because you don't expect it from Cadbury's. That's the other thing, is when it's an unexpected correlation, if you like, you kind of sit up and go, what's that got to do with chocolate? But actually, chocolate can bring you joy.
Well, that was one of our findings in the report, actually, is that so many of the success, like the meerkats, who
I love
would
the
imagine
meerkats. Yes.
You're selling insurance?
Yeah,
and how do you end up with meerkats? But that surprise, breaking the category convention, is a key part of it.
That's fantastically important, I think.
Yeah. You mentioned the drink driving campaign, and I think impacting culture is something we've talked about. Any campaigns that jump out at you that have changed culture or done something for society?
I know this is an ITV campaign, so I apologise for that.
You are allowed ITV examples, by the way.
Yes, I don't apologise really, because I think it's had such an enormous impact. Years ago, we started talking about mental health, because we do a lot of programmes where we have to watch mental health. So we have a lot of participants on programmes where we have to look after their mental health, because some of them put in difficult situations and so on. And so we started thinking about, how do we do this, and how do we do it in an ITV way where we're not preachy and we're not telling people what to do. And we came up with Britain Get Talking. And it is so powerful, partly because all our talent got behind it. So all our on-screen personalities and characters got behind it. And they broke the fourth wall. So they went direct to the audience, which is very unusual. And so you had Anton Deck, or you had Holly, or you had Susanna, you had just this range of them, O'Leary, name them, anybody. They all got behind it. It was quite extraordinary. And it had such an enormous impact on people, which was just talk. Really, we had a lot of experience with Calm before that, which is the campaign against living miserably about suicide. So we really got behind it, and it's had enormous impact. So there's millions of conversations now which we track being had about, just talk to somebody, talk to your mum, talk to your friend, talk to people, talk to your teacher, whatever it might be. And that has been hugely impactful, and we've sustained it. So it's something that we don't see as going away. It's something that we will continue to do.
That's wonderful, that is. One that I know you also had a hand in latterly, which is one of my all-time favourites, was the Vinnie Jones British Heart Foundation.
So
how
powerful.
Clever is that?
Oh my God.
Using, him playing the hard man, kind of like doing a CPR to staying alive, is brilliant. And I was chatting to Niels Leonard about this, and he was saying there were people on a 999 call actually doing CPR, actually repeating, staying alive.
Yeah.
And I think when I had Vicky Maguire on the podcast maybe a year or so ago, and she said they've actually measured the number of lives saved because of that campaign.
Yeah, it's so fantastic, isn't
wow.
it? No, it was. I remember them talking to me about that going on air and saying it's one of the best things they've ever seen. So you're right, that's been hugely impactful.
Well, one of the building on the British Heart Foundation, one of the things that really struck me, I think it's a couple of years ago when Christian Eriksen had the cardiac arrest in the Euros, was I think within about 72 hours, you had aired an ad responding to that, telling people what they should do in that situation.
Huge impact.
You assume it takes, back in the day when I used to buy, TV, it was like at least 12 weeks.
Yes,
but you turn that around in 3 days.
So I think that's a kind of changing a perception, isn't it, about long lead times and stuff like that. So I think the agency, Saatchi's, phoned our team. They got it on, and they actually even got it on before the Denmark-Belgium game. So maximum impact, and obviously for a very good cause. So can be
incredible.
Done.
Very, 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 very powerful. One of the other things that came through the book, which actually links to the work we did last year of Compound Creativity, is the importance of repeating a good idea.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, what are the campaigns that stand out to you that have stood the test of time, that get better and better over the years?
Well, we love tea, don't we?
We do, yes.
We're both drinking our tea. Yorkshire tea is a great example of that. Great end line, very consistent, repeat. I think Tesco's brilliant. Every little helps. I think they've gone back to that tagline when it has really mattered. I think that's a very effective example of that. Warburton's, McCain's, there's lots of advertisers that know what they're doing, and they know that it works, and then they know, that a lot of people find it very hard to do an end line. An end line, I think, is one of the most difficult things you can come up with. And I say that as a former client. I think if you get one and you know it works and it resonates with your consumer base, then repeat it.
100%. Yeah, repetition is your friend in this case, isn't it? Maybe the last point that came out as well, which is I think a tougher nut to crack, this one, is romancing the product. It's very easy to fall in the trap of I must tell everybody everything there is to know about what I'm selling. But there's been a few examples of brands that have creatively found ways of kind of communicating their products.
Yeah. So which is your favourite one of that?
Well, my favourite is Ronseal. I know this is old. I know this is old.
It does what it says on the tin. But you don't forget that line, do you?
Well, you'd still say it today.
And they paint the door, don't
30 years later.
It's incredible.
You'd still go,
that's incredible.
That's what it says on the tin.
So I don't know whether this is romancing Jude or whether this is romancing Adidas, but that Hey Jude ad, which was long and beautifully crafted, beautifully filmed, and it really made you go all tingly before the World Cup, or the Euros actually, not the World Cup, it was the Euros last year. I think that is a good example of romancing the product, right?
I think that ticked a lot of those boxes, didn't it? Emotion was in there, cultural moment as well.
Definitely.
That was when Hey Jude was becoming the adopted by England fans, wasn't it? As
everyone started singing it. So everyone was singing it. So cultural moment. Yeah, so that's good. For me, that was a very, very beautiful ad.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have to say one of our jobs is to inspire advertisers to do what we've just been discussing. You know, all of these things make good advertising. And sadly, not enough advertising is to that kind of standard. It doesn't have to be expensive, but humour works, repetition works, romancing product does. You know, there's all these things come together, and you don't have to use all of those ingredients. You just have to use some of them. You can make great advertising.
Well, this is another surprising thing I've discovered working with you guys at ITV is how many small and medium-sized businesses can afford to do TV advertising. I mean, particularly regionally as well.
Yeah, they can now.
Which is quite a surprise.
And that's because of ITVX, right?
Yeah.
So that's the route in, I think, for a lot of advertisers. And then I think actually we're doing quite a lot of Gen AI, you know, which we test and we trial and we research and all of that. But it does make it easier for SMEs to come in. So it's a good routine.
Really good point, actually, because we've been working together on making sure that Gen AI created adverts hit the standard by testing it on System 1 to make sure it delivers the same standards as everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Maybe to finish up on then, what is the future of TV advertising? We're celebrating 70 years. What are the big innovations that are going to keep TV relevant to the next 70?
Look, I think they're going to be continuing innovations. I mean, who thought of pause ads, you know? I mean, I had to really get them to explain to me, what exactly are you doing with that? But it's working, you know?
Just explain that, because I thought that's absolute genius. And why did no one think of this before?
That's quite clever.
This is so clever.
A pause ad is when, you know, lots of people pause in the middle to go and do something or to chat or whatever, or to take a phone call. It's you can advertise. So instead of it just being frozen shot, you put an ad on it. So British Airways are doing that now with us. So they've taken over all of Paul's ads. Fantastic. So then when you turn around, you think, oh, I must book my next holiday because I fancy going away. You know, it's clever. And another good example of innovation is, it's not quite pure advertising, but we closed ITVB and we're going to enhance ITV2 as a result of ITVB, which we did. But then some genius internally worked with the commercial team and said, why don't we try doing ITV Quiz, which will get a lot of advertising, we'll get a sponsor. People love quizzes. We've launched that. So we didn't close B, we actually made it ITV Quiz. It's doing 3 times better than ITVB was doing. It's doing really well. And that's a kind of really clever innovation, which is, okay, you might not need, you know, you might be able to move some of that content away, but what can we do with a channel? So I think innovation will just take lots of different forms. I think for ITV, though, given digital switchover will not be for some time, we will always be able to offer these mass audiences, which, you know, are rare. And I think we're the only ones commercially that can do it. And we do it at scale. And the combination, therefore, of doing mass simultaneous reach as well as doing very highly personalised and targeted advertising, and increasingly personalised as we go forward with all the data we have, is a really fantastic USP. And then I would add to that, you know, we've talked about some of the creative partnerships. You know, we have deep relationships with many, many advertisers. And you can't do it with all advertisers, but you can do it with many advertisers. And we do ad-funded entertainment, as we call it, ad-funded programming. We do a lot with M&S. We've done that with Flutter. We've done a program called Champions. And it works brilliantly for them. So, you know, all that very, where you get deep, we do with Boots, with Love Island, you know, we put their products in the villa, but we also have merchandise in store. So there's a whole merchandising opportunity. I mean, I think we do that better than anyone else, really. And we can do all of those things. So we offer a manifold, really, I suppose, of opportunity for clients and agencies.
Great. Carolyn, thank you so much. It's been great to talk about, and been so much fun working on this together, and really enjoyed it. And thank you for all your wisdom, advice.
Thank you for inviting me on at such an important time for ITV.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for doing this.
A pleasure.
Thank you very much for listening or watching Uncensored CMO. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching, hit subscribe there as well. I'd also love to get a review. Reviews make a big difference on other people discovering the show, so please do leave a review wherever you get your podcast. If you want to contact me, you can do. I'm over on X at UncensoredCMO, or on LinkedIn, where I'm under my own name, John Evans. Thanks for listening and watching. I'll see you next time.